call to order the council meeting of July 10th, 2017. Please call the roll.
Rich Bardak. Here. Peg Conway.
Here.
Ed Huttenbach.
Here.
Alita Kamine. Here. Tom Eving.
Here.
Ray Warren.
Here.
Natalie Wolf. Here. Scott Larmer.
Here.
Kevin Frank.
Here.
Lieutenant Bloom.
Here.
Rick Peck.
If everyone could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda this evening is the minutes from our last regularly scheduled meeting. Those minutes were distributed to all council members. Are there any changes, deletions, or additions to those? Seeing none, we can consider the minutes approved. Next, we'll move on to the finance report for May 2017.
I'd like to summarize the report for May 2017. The earnings tax collections for the month of May totaled $110,000. This is down about 26% from the May of 2016's collection of $150,000. The amount received for earning tax year to date is $1.2 million. The village did receive a property tax allocation in the amount of $73,000. This was property tax rollback, which is how it is classified. We also received our local government fund amount in just a little less than $5,000. So our total revenues for the month of May totaled $258,000, and that brings our total revenues to date at $2.2 million. Our estimate for the year is $4.8 million. So we've collected 46% of our revenues collected so far this year. On the expense side, for the month of May, expenses totaled $260,000. So the village has spent a little over $2 million as of the end of May. With a budget of $4.6 million, the village has expended 41% of its budget. That leaves the end of May with a $5.1 million unencumbered general fund balance, and that concludes my report.
Are there any questions for the manager? If not, we will now move on to committee reports. And the first committee on the agenda tonight is the Health, Education, and Welfare.
Thank you, Mayor. The Health, Education, and Welfare Committee met on June 20th. The subject was everyone's favorite, deer culling. So this committee meets once a year to discuss the status of the deer in Amberley Village, and we have deer, and we have a lot of deer, and we are having some challenges in meeting our anticipated needs in culling, but we're sort of stymied as to a better way to accomplish this. So open to ideas, and we'll be circling around back and talking about it again in fall, September, end of the summer.
Any questions or comments? If not, we'll move on to the...
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Just a question about the problem. The problem is,
The problem is the deer are pretty much not in the areas where we cull, which is Amberley Green and French Park. They have, I don't know, they don't like the food.
They don't like being
Bloom can
shot.
tell us maybe they don't like the food, or they've wisened up and
They don't like the guns.
they prefer the backyards, or right? They're getting tipped off. I mean, there were a couple of other ideas presented as possibilities, but I don't know that we're really ready to have people shooting deer in their backyards yet. That's not really, we're not, okay, Roger is. But really we have a problem, it's not getting better, and we don't have a solution yet.
Yeah, I just added, I think the biggest challenge is that, like has already been said, that, you know, for years now we've called deer in French Park and Amberley Green, and there still are deer in French Park and Amberley Green, but not the concentration of deer that are in the north, whether it's the Arborcrest area or down on the Farm Acres, Fair Oaks area. So that's the challenge is the people, some people around the parks are saying, well, we're not seeing very many deer anymore. yet other areas of the community are saying we're overwhelmed more than ever. So our challenge is how do we manage the deer in the residential areas? And they really don't leave the residential areas. There's no need for them to, because so many people are feeding them. There's good food sources. They love the acorns. They love bird feed. So we're just going to try to look for suggestions and address the challenges of the residential deer. So that's kind of where we're at.
And I think the goal, as stated at the committee, was to give additional guidance to the police department by November of this year, because that's really when they start planning their culling for. So we have some time to look at some options, but we need to get that guidance by November.
Are there are complaints up, or I know we've been keeping records in terms of, residential complaints and things like that. Is there any trend, or, because I know that's kind of an important metric.
Yeah. Let's see, we have had, we keep track of auto accidents and,
Right.
the usual stuff and complaints. And so in 2016, during the period of January through June, we had 14 total deer complaints, and that includes injured deer, deceased deer, euthanized deer, and auto accidents. In the same time period this year, we have had, from January 1st to June 20th, it's the same time period at the meeting, 25 total deer complaints. But auto accidents were at a historic low of 2. Last year in the same time period, we had 4 and a total of 11 for the year. They're very thorough on the complaints, because I noticed I had a complaint listed on this that I wouldn't have considered a complaint, but it's just any kind of notification of deer activity is logged as a complaint. Let's see. I don't think there's anything. The Clifton Deer Project is still a pilot program, and they have a grant for that, so it's not something that we do here right now.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to the Land Development Committee. And as chair of the Land Development Committee, the committee met over the past month. The purpose of the meeting was to consider moving forward to the next step in setting up, at least doing I would say exploring whether we want to put in place TIFs associated with both the development up at the north site and any possible future development at the former Gibson site. As part of that, we're going to retain legal counsel to help us explore what exactly we need to do. And the village manager has recommended, and the committee agreed to use Dinsmore to make the next step in looking at that. So at some point in the future, we will, obviously on the north side, given the fact that that development's underway, our time period to set up a TIF on that is already running. But at some point in the future, we may be coming to council to recommend one way or the other as far as setting up a TIF that might be able to be used to pay for infrastructure around it. So this was just a next step in the process. It's something that we definitely want to look into, because it is a good way to possibly pay for things that we may need. We're not sure that we want to do it for the north site, but definitely if any development that moves forward for the former Gibson site, a TIF will almost for sure be a critical thing that we want to do. So this is just an update. Any questions with respect to that? If not, that concludes the committee reports. We don't have on the agenda the manager's report, because the manager was not scheduled to be in but the manager does want to enlighten us on a couple things.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have 4 items I want to mention this evening. Last month, the council authorized an agreement for the electric aggregation program. You authorized an amendment to the electric program and authorized me to enter into an agreement. And at that time, we were talking about a 7.3% savings on electric, and the end result was that the reduction in the kilowatt hour is going to result in an 8.5% reduction in electric. So for those residents who are currently on the electric aggregation program, come September, October meter reading, depending on when their meters are read, they will realize an 8.5% decrease in the current rate that they are paying. And then as you compare our new rate to the Duke rate, that'll be about a 14% reduction from Duke. So it's still a very attractive program for our residents. We did include it in the e-news, this past e-news that went out, so we'd encourage residents to take advantage of that program. And most of our residents do are enrolled in the electric aggregation program. But for those that are not, I would encourage residents to look at that further. And then we also do offer the green rate, which is 2 cents more, but that is available to residents as well. And then the second item, we did have a flood on June the 23rd on Elbrook, and this was related to the redevelopment of the Port Authority property. We don't know exactly what the cause of that particular situation, but do believe it was a very isolated situation because the stormwater system that is being installed on the port property is not complete. So you may recall that they were putting a stormwater pipe along, running parallel to Elbrook on the east side and running parallel to the railroad tracks on the west side, and then a retention basin on the north side. So both the east and the west lines had been installed, but the retention basin had not been finalized yet. So the Port Authority was actually physically pumping water from the east to the west side. Obviously the system either got overloaded or something malfunctioned. Don't know exactly what the cause was, but that's what caused the surcharging of water to come back onto Elbrook. The Port Authority continues working the retention basin. It's not complete yet, but they do have an emergency channel that goes through there now. So they are continuing to work to get the situation rectified. We anticipate that their work will be complete by the end of August, no later than September on this particular project. And the third item is with the storm we had on Friday, and that sort of coincides with some of the other storms that have been occurring this summer. The brush pickup is going to be running behind. They were out today doing brush pickup. The volume is extremely high, as you can imagine, with the number of trees that came down in addition to other branches. They picked up 2.5 truckloads, and they didn't even get off of Monday's route today, so that's pretty significant. So just encourage residents to continue to put their brush out of the street, put the cut in towards the street. The village will eventually get it taken care of, but we will be behind. We will not be on a regular schedule, but we will be continuing with the schedule. And the last item I wanted to mention is that Temple Shalom, I mentioned a few months ago that particular property, the Temple Shalom will be demolished, and we now have a date on that. So July the 24th is when the area will be fenced off and demolition will begin. So in a couple of weeks, you will see the demolition of Temple Shalom, and we anticipate that will take about 2.5 weeks to be completed. And that concludes my report.
Okay, I know the village, or the vice mayor has it.
I have a couple of questions. The first is, I guess, an easy one because the brush. What happens if the brush is just in a big pile and it's not cut? That number one. That's a two-part question. Number one, that's the first part. And the second part, if you have a professional service come in and cut down your trees, are they supposed to haul them away with them rather than put them at the...
Yeah, let's answer your questions in reverse. So on your second
You might
question
even
about
know what I'm
professional
referring
service.
to.
Yes. If a professional tree service has been engaged to remove trees, then it's their responsibility to remove them from the village, not to put them out to the street for the village to take care of. So that is our policy.
Do we notify residents if they're, if their brush is just never going to get picked up? Because that
We do. Typically, our maintenance crew witnesses a professional landscaper doing that, and they typically will stop and give notification to the property owner that make sure that you're getting the full service here from your contractor. They should be removing that from your property. But there certainly are times when we don't know that. So, for the most part, we take brush, but if we do witness somebody, a professional service having it done, we do make them aware of that.
And the second question is with regard to the flooding. I don't remember where I saw it. It could have been on one of the TV news reports that called it a 100-year storm. And my ears kind of perked up because I know from working on the dam that is a specific legal thing. And this was not a 100-year storm, am I right? There's something specific that caused the backup that shouldn't have happened.
You're correct. I don't know how that particular storm has been judged or categorized, but there was a significant amount of rain. I mean, we had flooding issues throughout the village, so we obviously received a lot of rain, but the bigger issue here was some type of, either it's a malfunction or something didn't work properly with the transport of that water from the east to the west side.
I think my concern is that if we're calling it something that's like a natural event, is there any kind of insurance preclusion or somehow liability to whoever precluded because it's some natural, unpredicted event?
Well, we're not calling it a...
No, we're not. We are not.
Right,
I don't know
right.
where I saw it, but it was reported at that somewhere.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that we're not
No,
calling it that.
no, we're not calling it that. I don't know what capacity that storm was. Obviously, it was significant, but the bigger issue was there was the inability of the water to be pumped from the east to the west side, and it all backflowed where it originated from. So, yeah.
Any other council comment?
I think I know the answer to this, but I've been out and about talking with residents, getting signatures, so I'm hearing things. And someone expressed to me over the weekend concern or frustration with Duke around the restoration of power following an outage. Frustration that they see Duke trucks in the village, but this particular resident seems to live, and I think I live in the same place, where we're on a really tiny little line and people across the street are on a big line, and so they get fixed and we're out for another 12 hours, but the trucks are right in sight. And why don't they fix things geographically? Why does it have to be the way it is? Do you have any response? I mean, that's the way Duke does it, I suppose.
I don't have a response to that, but I will tell you that it was maybe a month or so ago, I had conversations with Duke because I did receive a complaint from a resident on Elbrook about the number of outages that occur on Elbrook. And on Elbrook, at least on the west side of Elbrook, the power line is in the back of the yards, and there are a lot of trees that are overhanging that particular power line. And so this resident requested that the village contact Duke and ask them to do a trimming in that area, which I did, but also made them aware of the sensitivity in that area. But part of when I contacted Duke, I did ask them, I'd like to see some kind of a report or something that would give me an idea of the number of outages that we experience here. I hear it more often than
This resident noted the number of outages, and we do. I mean, I would anecdotally say the same thing.
And that sort of goes hand in hand with having mature trees and a lot of trees in our village, but it seems, from my perspective, it's more excessive.
I think it's more excessive because we have power outages when there's no big branches down. We just have power outages.
I do know that we are scheduled next year for a Duke trim of trees.
That's not always welcome either.
No.
Might
But-
have my own trimmed before they come.
But I will continue to have conversations with Duke, maybe get a better feel as to how they handle when outages occur. What's their rotation process for taking care of it? I know this, when we had this storm on Friday night, we had a resident who was on oxygen. And so they were out for a significant number of hours. And so the village provided a generator to assist them in that process when they were one of the last ones to be turned back on. So you would think that maybe that would be a priority item, but I don't know how Duke specifically operates when it comes to outages like that. But I'll continue to pursue that and also try to get some information about the outage report.
I would be helpful. I also would, in that same vein, would like to say that I personally find it helpful when the chief posts on Nextdoor based on his information, because I find, and you can convey this to Duke if it seems relevant, that their current system, which is supposed to be probably more updated, of tracking where they are and what they're doing, is very unhelpful, very misleading, and so you're left with, at times, wondering, do they even know we have an outage here? Because their map indicates something is fixed or it's not, or if the crew is in progress but nothing's happening. So in the olden days, you used to actually get a person, or you get a phone recorded message that was kind of reassuring, like, okay, it's been reported in your area and our estimate is. You can't get anything accurate like that now.
Okay.
That concludes my questioning.
Thanks for the information.
Okay, I know Councilman Warren has.
Right, thank you. Just got a question about the June 23rd flood. And you mentioned that the problem, according to the Port Authority, the problem was related to the incompletion of the retention basin, right? Is that?
I'm not indicating that's the problem. I'm indicating that there was a pump that pumped from the east to the west side.
But the retention basin hasn't been completed yet.
Right, the retention basin, that's why they put it there,
Right.
because the retention basin did not exist yet.
So a question I have is, has the Port Authority been approached and basically asked, okay, if that retention part of the project had been completed, would the property been able to handle all that water?
That's a definite yes.
Okay, that's a definite.
Yeah, that's the plans that we reviewed, our engineer approved, FEMA approved, everybody's been signed off on that plan. It's a very legitimate plan, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have another kind of constituent question related. I know that the tax assessments have gone out, the reappraisals have gone out, and I've been hearing, questions about sort of like, anecdotally, everybody, did yours go up, did yours go down, how are they doing? Just really a process question. Maybe this is coming to the next finance committee meeting, or maybe we do we get a village-wide report for people who are interested in potentially contesting it or something? Do we end up getting village-wide information? What's our standard in terms of what we do, and then what we report, and where and how, and just so we can tell residents?
The village does not get involved with the contesting. If a resident has a concern about that, then we would refer them to the Hamilton County Auditor's Office, which does have a process for doing that. But it's my plan is that our next finance committee, if we have that information gathered, we will talk about the difference in the values. If we have information that is in summary form, that we can make those conclusions. I've spoken to a couple residents that have expressed what their increase was, which one of them expressed it was about a 10% increase, which surprised me a little bit. So I'm not seeing the full report yet. So, okay. Right. I read the Inquirer article that said that we had gained, but I've not seen the actual numbers on that. So, yeah, so that's an item that we will discuss in the next finance committee.
We can tell residents that we will have more village-wide information after that meeting. Basically.
Yes.
Okay.
But if it is, as you're indicating, that it's all over the place, then our information is not going to be maybe all that helpful. But when it comes down to it, if a resident feels as though their property has been overvalued, that's really an issue between them and the Hamilton County Auditor's Office.
Okay, any other questions for the mayor? Now we'll move on to the mayor's report. I, didn't plan this in advance, but I have four. The Environmental Stewardship Committee has its next meeting 2 weeks from this evening on July 24th at 7 p.m. down in the community room. Next, on June 15th, there was the public hearing associated with the Duke Central Corridor expansion project. That public hearing took place at the University of Cincinnati Blue Ash campus. It was very well attended. Councilwoman Conway presented testimony, Councilman Warren presented testimony, and I also presented testimony. It was a long day for many. It was originally scheduled to go from 3 to 8. I believe it went from 3 to about 10:15. There were no members of the Ohio Public Sighting Board present, which was a big disappointment to many, including myself and the other members of council. Not only a disappointment, but a big surprise. So this process is just continuing, and there is an update for that later on in the agenda. Next, I think it was June 29th, we had a meeting of the Tax Incentive Review Committee, which is a committee that the county puts in any time that we give a business a tax incentive. And as you will recall, about 4 or 5 years ago, we did give Topics a tax incentive associated with their investment. And, I think this is, again, a case where Topics should be very much congratulated. Not only have they completely lived up to exactly what they were going to say, they have exceeded exactly what they were going to say. And then, the report from the county very much noted that the review period will continue another couple years, but, as far as I'm concerned, Topics has really fulfilled everything that they said they were going to do. And it was a great meeting to hear that from others saying the same thing. And then finally, the village manager and I did have a meeting over the past month with County Commissioner Driehaus. She was in the midst of, I believe it was 49 communities. She was attempting to do that in 49 days. I think it was going to extend a little past the 49 days. But to her credit, she was really going around and trying to make sure that communities were fully aware of all services that were available to communities to take advantage of. And, I, again, give a lot of credit to our administration and police force and everybody. She was very impressed, and as every service that she mentioned, the village manager was able to say, oh yeah, we do that, we do that. So we do take advantage of those, but it was a great opportunity to, again, just not only hear those things, but just to reach out on her part, and I give her a lot of credit for doing that. So the village manager sent her a thank you, and I thank him for that. That concludes my report. Any questions?
I just wanted to thank you and Councilmembers Warren and Conway for the testimony on the pipeline. It was, and actually almost all of us were there. I think I counted that our community had the highest representation of our elected officials of any of the communities there in the room. So it was great. And just for residents who might be interested in seeing the testimony or hearing it, it's available on ICRC's website, has the full video. It is extremely long, but you can see our...
We're about 3 hours in, I think.
3 hours in, our representatives. And actually, if you are even more, even more horrible way to review it is probably much less interesting is, I think on the public record website, on the PUCO website, is the full transcribed by those poor reporters who were there the whole night.
The OPSB members are pouring over it.
Right. So, but I do encourage our three representatives did us very well, and so I encourage people to watch that video if you're so inclined. And thank you again.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we will move on to new business. Any new business?
I just want to commend the police department for the bike safety fair at the JCC a couple weeks ago. It was a great, beautiful day, perfect weather, and it seemed like the extra space made for a nice course for the kids, and it was a really nice day.
Anything else? If not, Kevin, if you want to just give us a little update on the current state of affairs with respect to our intervention in the Duke pipeline case.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. It's probably about time for an update anyway. It's been a few months, I think, since we really last talked about it. The there are attorneys for the various jurisdictions who are involved in opposing this pipeline that have been having conference calls every other week, and now it's actually every week. So Friday mornings, we get together and kind of talk about what the status is and what our strategy is and things like that. And that is proceeding, that is still ongoing. That's kind of how we're sharing information between the communities and coordinating responses to Duke and their application before the Ohio Power Siting Board. As most people know by now, the dates have been moved back. So there was originally a hearing before the Ohio Power Siting Board, I think July 12th. So was it the 10th? Was it today? Or,
I thought it was
this
Wednesday.
week, Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday? Whatever it was, it's been moved back to September 11th. So Monday, September 11th is the new date for the hearing before the Power Siting Board. And there's a deadline of September 1st for the village and everybody else to get their written testimony before the Power Siting Board. So just want to give a quick kind of public update on what the status is right now. I have a more, I would say, confidential update. If you wish to hear it in executive session, I can kind of give you the status and a little more detail about what's going on behind the scenes as far as strategy and just what's going on.
I'd like to move that we receive an update on that litigation in executive session.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adjourn to executive session to receive an update from the solicitor on a matter, on a legal matter, and obviously it's subject to attorney-client privilege. And so, obviously executive privileges or executive sessions are ideally, it's the ideal event for that type of thing. So, do I call a roll for?
Yes.
So if you could call a roll with respect to the motion to move into executive session.
Rich Farda? Kate Conway?
Yes.
Ed Hattenbach? Yes. Alita Kamine? Yes. Tom Muthing?
Yes.
Ray Warren?
Yes?
Natalie Wolf?
Yes.
Okay, so it is now 7:03, and we are going to be adjourning to executive session. To the resident who is present, we will come back from executive session, but at that point, the expectation will be that the meeting will just be adjourned. So you're welcome to stay if you would like, but you're also...
I'll go home and dinner.